Welcome to Beyond the Breakwater, where just beyond the crashing waves of fear, discomfort, and doubt lies the greatest potential for life transformation. We want to guide you into the open waters where the calculated risk you take becomes the turning point for you or your organization to thrive. So draw up your anchors and prepare for departure in this week's episode of Beyond the Breakwater. Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Breakwater. Last week, we had Matt Markey on as a guest. We have him again here today. I'm Lindsay, and this is Ed. And we're kind of going to get into the nuts and bolts of Pivot Point, why we would even think about starting an appliance and job creation ministry, and just hope to inspire anybody who might be listening and thinking the same thing. And maybe you're not going to start an appliance or an employment ministry, but maybe you're just thinking of starting somewhere. We have always stressed that we don't want you to copy and paste the ministries. Like, you certainly can, but do something that works in the context of your ministry, but apply the principles. So we're going to talk a lot about the principles today, some of the blueprints that we have of Pivot Point, and just giving a roadmap. But just think of ways that you can apply what is happening in this ministry to where you're serving, what you're doing, what you're thinking of starting. So Matt, if you could just kind of give an overview, what is Pivot Point?
Overview, Pivot Point. We are multi-layered ministry. I tend to lean towards the jobs ministry, that we provide employment for people with barriers to employment. Mm-hmm. And that might be the ability to get a job or to keep a job. But we accomplish that through our second layer of ministry, which is our appliance business. We take in donated appliances from our community. What does that mean, right? Like outlying communities, it's not just, it's how far can we drive today? And how much are you willing to help us fill our truck? Take those appliances, bring them back. The people that are now employed are working on those machines, thoroughly refurbishing them. Cleaning them is usually the biggest piece of the puzzle. And then we're selling them back to essentially afford two things. One, to pay the people we now employ. Mm-hmm. And then secondly, to afford people the opportunity to purchase necessary home appliances, refrigerators, washers, dryers, ranges, at massively reduced cost. Mm-hmm. Let's just say reasonable, mm-hmm. right? I mean, and so there's a weird balance that goes with it, but we essentially are responding to the need in the community that says we need this stuff. Mm-hmm. And we can't afford to go buy it at Home Depot, ABC, Best Buy, whatever. Mm-hmm. And we definitely can't afford to rent it. And through a small amount of finance, you can have in your home this appliance. And it's amazing because the appliance feeds the ability to pay somebody who needs employment. Mm-hmm. And then that employment turns into the ability to afford a washing machine without breaking the bank and creating other problems.
Yeah. So talk about real quick, like the need of an appliance, because I don't think people really see that necessarily as a need until they're in that position. So, I mean, there's an alternative. You said rent, or I'm assuming you mean like take things to like a laundromat, which Ed, you did an experiment on this, right? Like talk about like what is the cost of using a laundromat?
Well, in our town, somebody told me that it costs $60 to do your laundry. So I thought, okay, I'll take the challenge. So we have 4 kids, and I took all of our laundry and for my wife and myself and our 4 kids, and I paid $60 to do our laundry.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, this is a lot of money to pay if you're going every week or every other week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then if you can't afford a laundromat, like what's the alternative then when you do not have a washer and dryer, and why is that important? Or refrigerator?
So when you talk about why is this a need? I mean, because I think it's a valid question. Why is an appliance a need? I would tell you that we can give you stories that directly link to, oh yeah, no kidding. Because mom calls and says, the school told me that they're giving me a week to get the kids to show up with clean clothes or they will be calling CPS. Right? And another person says, oh, they called CPS on us many times. And now it's like, get this taken care of, or we're going to be taking the kids out of the home. The same would hold true for the refrigerator. We desire to live healthy lives, and that requires the ability to purchase food, oftentimes perishable food. And if that perishable food doesn't have refrigeration, it's not at all healthy for us. I mean, I personally lived in the YMCA where my neighbors were using the window ledge in February to keep their stuff cold, right? And the reality is that even that freeze, refreeze, all of that kind of stuff instantly takes a healthy food product and has a potential to turn it into poison, right? I mean, and so when we start talking about, okay, economically, I have food stamps and I just spent all of my food stamps. If your refrigerator dies, you're throwing not only the refrigerator away, but you're also now throwing the food stamp money away, literally in the trash.
Yeah.
And so you can see that the need for appliance is, I mean, like Ed's talking about as it relates to a laundromat and the cost, right? And that's the other piece of the puzzle is that people need it, but they don't exactly have just oodles amount of cash, right? Like we serve the Alice population. I describe it in a, I think a simpler way is working poor. I have a job, but it doesn't mean that I can afford to respond to everything that breaks in my house.
So typically all of our ministries have launched out of a need, us trying to address a need, this one being appliances and jobs. But Ed, where did this start? Can you give the history context of where we inherited Pivot Point, how it started?
Yeah, well, let's go even before Pivot Point, because we always thought job creation, we saw that as a need in the community. We saw people who had barriers to employment. So I'm actually wearing the shirt, His Hands Home and Lawn Care. And that's how we started job creation, that we got people who needed a job, couldn't get a job, and we went knocking on doors and said, can we rake your leaves for you? Can we wash your windows? Would you hire us for 4 man-hours to do what you can do for yourself? So that means show up with 4 people, we'll work for 1 hour for $100 bill, and we would wash windows, clean gutters, something like that. And the community actually rejected it because they didn't trust the people that were coming to their home. In their words, I'm not using that word, but the word that they used is they said, we don't want thugs. And so we had the right idea of how to help with jobs, but we didn't have the right product, which is why we've talked so many times in the podcast. You know, it's the principles, not the product. So we had the idea for job creation, and then that ministry died. And we just were like, well, okay, that's not what we're supposed to do. And then I got this phone call, strangely, from somebody who had heard that 1016, which is an alcohol treatment center, started a ministry in appliances. And I knew about it because actually the founder of it was going to our church at the time. So he was telling me about it. And he said, you won't believe it, but they're closing it. And I said, what do you mean? And it was the day before Thanksgiving, and he said, they're closing it on Tuesday permanently. And I said, didn't you just open 3 months ago? And he said, yeah. And I said, okay, let me make a phone call. So I called 1016 and talked to Sam. He's the CEO. And I said, it's my understanding that you're closing it on Tuesday. He said, we are. I said, can I have it? And he laughed. He goes, what? I said, well, you're closing it, right? He said, yeah. Well, can we have it? He goes, okay. He said, well, let me have some attorneys. And I said, no, we don't need any attorneys. Just hand over the keys. We'll take everybody off your payroll. We'll put them on our payroll on Tuesday. And we couldn't have done this any more simple than that. We called the insurance company and said, would you add this to our liability? And on Tuesday, we were in the appliance business.
Wow.
And it was kind of funny because I went to the next board meeting And they're like, okay, so what's new? And I said, well, we have a new business. They're like, what? And I told them, and they're like, well, when does that start? I said, what did 3 weeks ago? So
At what point, like, what ministries did the church already have at this point?
well, they had the garage, and we had Journey's coffee house.
His hands?
We had the early care and education.
Oh,
Yeah,
you
the
said
garage we had.
Okay.
I think we had the food ministry going. So it wasn't like
This is normal behavior for you.
This is normal behavior. So I told them we just inherited a new entrepreneurial ministry, which is what we call them. And they were excited about it. So we were in the appliance business. That's how it started.
Wow.
It couldn't have gone more simple. So
Yeah.
we had nothing invested. There was the only risk for me, which I took really seriously, is that we had people's livelihood. And we're like, we got to make this go. So we got to figure out a way to make sure that this is profitable, because it wasn't, which is why they were closing it.
So I'm going to throw this question out there. I don't know which of you to direct it at, so you can fight over it. But payroll, that's like, I think probably something that people are hearing. Where do you get the funding to pay your employees?
Matt?
So it's interesting you say that, because we want to tell people. And so when we sell appliances, every single tag with a price says, ask me about Pivot Point. And what we want to say to people is, you purchasing this pays the payroll, right? I mean, that's a really shortened version of what you like to tell people when they're asking about Pivot Point. But it is, how do you cover payroll? Sell appliances. Now, is there a constant challenge? Of course there is, right? Because we like to employ more employees, right? So how do you increase that? Okay, there's lots of questions, but the simple answer, sell stuff.
So isn't there cost associated with fixing appliances?
There is a cost associated with fixing appliances, and that is a part of the staff development that goes, and there's a constant trade, right? But the amazing thing, and this is, to me, it's a God thing, because it doesn't make sense, right? And I think that's the piece. It doesn't make sense, is that you take this thing and we ask, as a part of the process, what do we think we can sell it for if we can fix it? And then we set a number.
How do you determine that price?
Well, it's hard to determine, but we say if we could figure out what it would be retail new, that we would sell it for a quarter of that cost.
Okay.
Why? Because retail new, pretty standard industry thing, would be 1 year manufacturer warranty. We're offering a quarter of that warranty. So a quarter of the total price kind of makes sense, sort of. But at the same time, because it's been gifted to us, we have ultimate control and flexibility. So as it relates to, go back to the payroll question, when somebody says, can you make me a deal? The answer is, oh, yes, we can. But when we do, we're limiting our ability to cover payroll, right? And so when we take that machine and we decide, is it fixable? We ask hard questions. How much do we have to spend, right? I mean, if you're going to clean on a machine for 2 days, labor hours are a part of the cost. So is it worth cleaning for 2 days? If you can sell it for $500, yeah, it is. If you can sell it for only $100, probably not, right?
So,
I mean, and so these are questions. And the coolest part about it is, even though it's very business-oriented mindset, it's also applying a learning moment for our staff that they now can take into future employment job interviews and say, I have the ability to problem solve. Let me give you examples of problems I solve.
Yeah.
Let me jump in here for a minute,
Yeah.
because I think sometimes listeners are like, we're a church. What are we doing in business? Why would you do that? And I just want to highlight that, and I think this is where the path that we've gone down. In order for a church to do ministry, if you don't have some kind of a funding source, then you're going to be, it's a total loss. That all the money given is going to be like fixing up appliances, paying people, and giving everything away. And so you're really highlighting like a whole model shift that we've done as a church of saying, but if we go into business And we use a business model that allows us to do the ministry. So we use the business to fund the ministry. And that way the cost to the church, I mean, Matt, you know the numbers. I mean, approximately, I think Pivot Point is actually one of the most incredible ministries because you're doing about $150,000 ministry a year. And what's typically been your net?
Pretty darn close to that.
Pretty darn close
Really
to breaking
close to
even.
that. We're very razor thin, break even, or just under. It's really close.
Yeah, so you're able to do this incredible people ministry. You're reaching into the Alice population. I mean, how many appliances would you say are given a month, and how many are you selling in a month?
So, I mean, we're right at roughly 100 appliances a month. And
That you're receiving?
that we're receiving donated appliances roughly. And I mean, I can tell you exactly last week, and I could tell you exactly where we're at today, right? So today's Thursday, and we're at 31 appliances this week so far. Now that will change by the end of today, and we'll add to it tomorrow. But if you're just like, okay, well, last week you had 27, this week you had 30 some. I mean, 4 weeks in a month, 100 is a pretty easy number. There's an ebb and flow to how many of these appliances are resellable because they, month to month, week to week, we might see stuff that is not repairable. But I think that we're pretty darn close to about 50% of donated appliances are turned back into resellable. The other kind of cool, or how do you start really using these appliances to their greatest, right? Because I think that's the other thing, is that we see it as we receive blessing, and then we want to now take this blessing and maximize it, right? Because we're asking our neighbors, don't throw it in the trash. And maybe you could get 20, 30, 40 bucks off the Facebook marketplace on a sale. But if you give it to us, we can turn what would have been 30, 40 bucks in your pocket into something greater. What is that, right? Like, yeah, it's cash sale for us, but the something greater is you're changing people's lives by helping them get a job. You're changing people's lives by affording them to purchase your thing that you were going to get rid of anyway, right? And now we're saying, if we can't fix it, what's still worth it? Because every part that we don't put in a trash bin or a recycle bin is a part that can be used to fix something, right? So when we really look at this whole thing, like, how much do you spend to fix something? Again, how much do we think we can sell it for is the first question. And that will dictate how much we are willing to spend to fix it. And we don't spend too much to fix anything because we have it in the back room, right? Like, we save a timer off of a dryer that doesn't work because purchasing that dryer timer might be $120 investment.
So you're running through even some principles here.
I
I
was
may
just
not
thinking
realize
that.
it. Let me just highlight some of them while you're thinking about your next question.
Oh,
That's a hint.
got it.
So for the church to reach, I mean, you just mentioned 100 people are donating appliances, 50 people are purchasing appliances. So there's 150, that's 1,800 people a year that there's a ministry and you're connecting with that many people. You're also using the appliances to do people ministry, but every one of those persons, I mean, the church is solving a need here. This is what's beautiful, is that churches usually don't think, how do we solve a community need? And there's a community need for jobs. There's a community need for health and appliances. There's a community need for Alice population to be able to buy something that's affordable. And the church is solving all these needs. And I think the other thing that you talked about, but I don't want people to miss, is that you're asking people, typically above 72,000, that's above Alice, who are buying a new appliance anyways, to, instead of just scrap it out and pay $50 for a scrap fee, they can make a difference in someone's life without asking them for an extra nickel. Like, you don't say, can I have your appliance, and then would you pay $50 so that I can hire somebody? You're just saying, you said it. You're going to scrap it anyways. Why don't you let us use it? You're changing a life, and you don't. It's not going to cost you anything. There's so many incredible principles there that the church is able to do these kinds of things that nobody in town could do this because others are looking for profit. They're looking to benefit somehow. And I think we're just, if we can break even and yet do all of this ministry at a break even level, it's incredible. Okay, you probably have another question.
Well, I was kind of just thinking of exactly those things of like brokering. That's kind of what we call
that's
that,
the
right?
brokering.
Like you can stand right in the middle as pivot point of you take somebody who has something to give, something extra, and taking someone who has a need and pairing the two. And also the reason why we're charging for these appliances, I think is twofold. One, because when you talk about serving Alice, you want to serve in a way that is dignifying to a person. And so if they can pay for what they are receiving, that preserves someone's dignity because, okay, I'm not a charity case. I'm not receiving something, but like I have the ability to pay for it. I just can't pay what the astronomical price is at retail. But you've lowered the water level for me to be able to say, like, this is what I can pay. And I earned that. And it's a done deal. And that was a transaction. And so we're set. I don't owe you anything. I don't have to come back. I don't have to like serve. I don't have to like, it's the slate has been cleared. And so one, it's preserving that dignity, but two, like we've also talked about the principle of multiplication and like recycling. So we have these donated appliances, and if we were to give them all away for free, like there's nothing going back into the program and you have to just start over again. But when you're charging for something as well, it's like, okay, now we have money back in the pocket to redistribute to whatever it may be, payroll, to toolkits, which is where I want you to go next.
Actually, I feel like I'm
the brainwave.
Like,
yeah.
oh, yeah, for sure. So it's interesting you say that because when you talk about that dignity piece as it relates to the appliance, like creating something and making it affordable, that is good by itself. But the problem that we see is when we give it, there is a consistent lack of, I don't really care so much about this, right? I will misuse it. I will treat it however I want.
So you
right?
see that even with your employees.
Right,
Well,
from the
and
employee
that's where
side
I
of
was going to
things.
go
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
we see it with the appliance piece, and we work with community partners that help people to get these for free. And in all fairness, they're a community that we love partnering with, but it's also created some tension because when you hand people this appliance, they just don't care as much. Okay. And if they paid the $10 that they could afford, their care is different and they're changing. And we do the same thing in our ministry with our employees where we say, you need things to do your job. And it's literally as tools. And instead of saying, hey, the tools are over there, just go ahead and grab them, which in all fairness, that's how it worked initially. And what we saw was the same responsiveness. It's not mine, so I don't care about it. And so we've instituted a toolkit program where all employees come in and they get a base kit. It's not the greatest thing ever, but it's theirs. And I'm telling you, like I'm witnessing right now, this is a real live actual works thing, right? Where when you didn't give it to them, okay, they have to earn it. It's for these tools to belong to them, they have to work 150 hours. Now, if they want to borrow them because they're going to work on their car tomorrow night, which is a thing, no problem, right? But if they decide they want to quit, that kit stays if they haven't worked 150 hours.
So Matt, let's make sure that everybody understands what you're talking. I mean, I understand.
Sure, yeah.
You probably understand, but if you're listening, you're like, wait a minute. So you would buy a set of tools that cost about how much?
It's about $300.
Okay, so then you take this brand new toolkit, an employee comes in, you hand this to them and say, these are yours, but you have to earn them. And you said they have to earn them, they have to work 150 hours. then it's theirs to take with them, right? So if they leave Pivot Point, it's theirs.
Absolutely.
And so what have you noticed the difference between, I don't really care about the, the shop toolbox, and by the way, we inherited some of those when we got it. There was a little small toolbox and we added to it. But I love the idea that you're doing, because how do they take care of the toolbox that you give them?
So the toolbox they give that they've received, and I given, and Nathan is the most current example. He's the most current recipient. The screwdrivers go where the screwdrivers go. The wrenches go where the wrenches grow. And if it happens to be sitting on top of a washer at about 4:30, our day ends at 5:00, it will, because it's Nathan's, find its way back to the box. Where before the toolkit program existed, if it was sitting on a washer at the end of the day, that's where it would be tomorrow, right? And if it happened to be in the back seat of somebody's car for a minute, that's where it would be tomorrow, right? Like, there is just something about ownership that there's a pride level that goes along with it. There is a confidence level that goes along with it. And it spawns a completely different mindset. And when we're intentionally trying to shift our staff team to grow, and we talk about it, right? Like, hey, look, this is your thing, right? And we'll replace things that wear out. That's not an issue. But it is absolutely amazing. And it's just simply, if our value is we love Jesus, we love people, and dignity is important. How do you blend them together? And every day we're asking the question, can we do it better? And we can provide dignity by saying, hey, look, I get your life doesn't afford you. I mean, in all fairness, talk to somebody who's in hardcore recovery. I'm not talking about you smoke weed when you're 16. I'm talking about the first time you did cocaine was when you were 12, right? Like, you were formerly a meth addict, right? Like, this is what I'm talking about. If they ever had tools, their story is usually they sold tools to get their drugs. They don't have them anymore.
So another principle, I think, with like the toolbox toolkit program is the giving structure of today, and just like the feeling or fatigue people have when they're giving to something that is like overhead costs or operational expenses. But Pivot Point has a funding model. I don't know if you could call it a model, but it's like we at least have two different funds you can give to for Pivot Point. One is the scholarship, so giving to the employee training program, and then the other is that toolkit program. So it being your donation to this fund for the toolbox goes directly towards, like, it costs $300 to get this toolbox for somebody who is in our employee training program. Could you cover the $300? And people know that they are giving their dollar goes directly to the impact of that employee. So I just don't want people to miss that piece as well.
That just happened. I mean, Matt, you just talked to me just the other day and said you got a little bit of money. Somebody had given you a check.
Yeah.
And we talked about, why don't you set it aside and buy tools? And we talked about upgrading a few tools and making it even nicer for the employees to be able to earn that. Matt, when you talk about dignity, another great story, but it's really a principle behind it. You have a favorite dryer, and you're going to have to make sure that everybody understands this. You have a favorite dryer that you have on sale for $60. And I don't know how many times you sold that dryer over and over and over. And it's not because it's a problem. Please walk us through, why did you sell one dryer like 5 or 6 times?
So I sold this dryer multiple times, mostly because people come in and they're wanting to find out, what will you give me? And we don't ask for financial background on a purchase of something, right? Like, oftentimes our partners are going to say, for us to provide a voucher for you, I need pay stubs, I need tax papers. We don't do that. Partly we don't have the time to do it, but also because if we can help, we want to help, but we also don't want to be taken advantage of either, right? And so we will take somebody through and they'll say, oh, I really need this thing. Specifically, I need a dryer. And you say, okay, well, what can you afford? I don't have anything. That's what I can't afford anything. And part of you is sitting there thinking, well, then why are you here? Right? Like, okay.
Yeah. How many times do we go to a store
You can't
and ask them to
afford
give
anything.
it?
And it's like, well, I got $10. Okay. Well, I have one over here. It's nothing nice about it, right? It works. That's the only thing I can promise you that it works. It said, if you have $10, I'm asking 60 for it, but I know you're struggling, and this thing works. I'll even bring
Define
it to
like
your
the
house.
look of it.
Okay,
That might give people. Like,
honestly,
a reference.
there's a timer knob on it, and
it's older, right? Like it's one of your older ones.
It's significantly rusty. The timer knob. The only way you know what cycle you selected is there's a piece of electrical tape that's the line, right? Like, I mean, it literally is just a functioning thing, but there is nothing nice looking about it. But when we ask them, if you only have, let's just say 10 or a nickel or a quarter, right? We'll bring it to your house. That is okay. And I would say to you that there are some people who say, but that's the one I want. Would you give me that for the $10? Can't do it, right? That's the one I want. Sorry, no. Oh my gosh, you'd sell me that for $10? It works? Thank you. I mean, and it's almost like a broken record in the responsiveness, but it is the instant trigger that says this person genuinely has a need. They genuinely have a need. And that is just enough of a filter and way better for me and our team, as opposed to, I don't want to know your financials. I don't want to know what your last pay stub was. But then what we do is we take the dryer that we like better and we deliver that
and like surprise it.
Like
they're expecting this. Yeah, they're
expecting
barely functioning thing.
Are you taking this home today because I can fit in the back of my car? And honestly, I say you probably get in there, but I'm nervous, right? Like, it's so much better if we maybe come help do the install or whatever. Like, let's take a look at the whole thing. And nobody is going to say, oh, geez, please, I want to carry it in my house, right? They don't do that either, right? So when you offer to deliver for free, sure, right? And so then we take something nicer, right? Like, it is truly a filter piece for us. And we, in all fairness, because of just the season we're in today, there's more filter pieces in our showroom now, right? And that's what they are. I mean, and is there a nervousness about talking about that publicly? Yeah, maybe. And honestly, there's times when we get taken advantage of and we feel like, oh, geez, that was one of them.
Yeah.
Not in this circumstance.
You know, Matt, I love when you tell this story, because when you think about if a person is really in need and you say, I can help meet that need, you expressed it, the gratitude. That's the dignity piece that is true of everything that we're doing. It's so important. And then I love it that you really get to bless them with something that's valued so much greater and surprise them. And flip that over on sometimes, I think all of us have this in ministry where, oh, I only have $10, but I want the best you have, and somehow give it to me or I'm mad. And that's the thing. Really, I mean, what we find in the other ministries is that happens maybe 3% of the time or 5%, that you just feel yucky after that. You know, somebody's making you feel bad because you're trying to help them and it wasn't good enough. They want something more. And that's why some churches are just like, we don't want to do this. This is too hard. We're trying to help, and then we're made to feel yucky trying to help somebody. And I think you brilliantly found a way to, like, as you called it, a filter, like, all right, we're going to sell this dryer. And that's why I love that you keep selling that dryer over and over and over, but it never gets delivered.
Yeah.
Well, and the crazy thing is we had a range that was like that. And the guy just wanted it. He's like, no, that's the one I really want. And I'm just like, come on, man, really? And he's like, I wanted that one. I'm just like, good thing we didn't load the truck.
Right. So I have to ask you, if you opened up that dryer for $60, is it actually a real functioning dryer or is
Oh,
it
yeah.
empty?
It works.
Okay, I'm just
works.
wondering if it's like, oh, it doesn't
Just
even
a
work.
shell.
So it's
Yeah.
just a shell.
No, in all fairness, because one, our inventory turns over so much that it's possible that that may end up being the last dryer we have, right? In which case, if that's the last dryer and we're telling people it works, it's going to work, right?
Yeah.
And if the day comes and it goes because it's the last dryer we have, we'll get another one and we'll work through that, which is, again, God works in crazy ways because you're like, where the heck do all these appliances come from?
I
Right?
think that a lot. I'm
Right.
like, where do they come
in
from,
all
and why do
fairness,
so many
we do
people
have
need
really
them?
good partnership with Lowe's in town.
Talk about that partnership?
Well, they refer people to us. And the crazy cool part about it is that Lowe's charges. So somebody is making money to haul away the used appliance when they make a sale. And our Lowe's in Midland was told by corporate, what's the deal? You are massively lagging behind every other franchise store on the delivery fee or the pickup fee or whatever the heck they charge it. And you need to start selling this more. And their management team, for whatever reason, says, no, we don't. And they always, Lowe's told me to call you because instead of charging $50 to take your thing away, you mean you'll come get it for free? Right. And occasionally the person will say, well, I was going to pay Lowe's $50, but when I heard about you, here's $100.
Wow.
Like, are you kidding me? Right. Like that. And that does happen. Not that we ask for that because we don't. Right. Like in some ways we definitely are community service because we'll go in your basement and pull the thing out.
Yeah.
There's another principle here that you're talking about. The church is able to do things that others can't do. And this is one of those that you have a business manager at Lowe's, and we just want to give a shout out to Lowe's of just the amazing partner that they have been, that somebody in Lowe's wants to make a difference and use in their position and say, let's do people over profits. Let's help this organization, Pivot Point, who's trying to help people, and we have the ability to just give up a few bucks so that we can help them help other people. That's the amazing things that churches get to do is stand in that gap and say to a business owner, we want to help you make a difference in someone's life. Help us, help someone else. And again, at no cost to the church because we're brokering a deal. And so somebody has an appliance, somebody gets an appliance, your employees and you are standing in the middle doing a business deal within so that everybody has a salary and income and everybody goes home. And it's just like everybody wins. It's an incredible ministry.
Yeah. So also with that, another principle we talk about are partnerships. Like I don't think any of our ministries would exist without the community partnerships that we do have. For you, one of them is Lowe's. Are there any other partnerships that you're working with?
Yes. Right. Okay. So we have partnerships at various levels and I'm constantly fishing to grow those partnerships. And when I say fishing, it's like, I just want to, what's your business? Okay. And is there a way to connect? And what's been fun is that partnerships can go into the appliance realm, right? So we have community nonprofits that support voucher programs. Home to Stay is one of our big ones. And they're a local housing resource for rent, utilities, all that kind of stuff. And they used to take in appliances and then just give them away as a part of their furniture program, which they still have. And they realized that they were taking in what people said were functioning appliances, weren't. And there was creating a huge problem for them because now this person is calling mad. Why does the fridge not work? And so the partnership was natural for them, right? Like, we'll just tell people, call you if they have a donation. And then we said, okay, well, how do we help people get your people when they need a donation? And so they had funding source and it partners with, they do filter. And then we backfill by providing the appliance when it's available. Mid-Michigan Community Action does a very similar approach to the process where they are the filter and then we are the broker. Was that the term that we broker and make sure that the appliance gets there? In addition to that partnership, we partnership to fill Pivot Point employee spots, right? So local, it's MEC4 is a jail ministry that is a transitional, like former offenders ministry, I guess would be the more appropriate way. And they will refer people to employment, right? So if you knew Richard, he's no longer with us, he was a direct referral through that program. But now we are looking to expand our partnerships and have some already where they say, okay, we see what you're doing with people and we need people to fill spots, fill jobs. And so I'm super excited about this one and haven't even really talked to Ed about it. But
fun.
we have a local landscape company that needs some bodies and they will pay better than what we pay part-time. So we will keep on part-time and hopefully it's Nathan, we'll see, right? That Nathan will stay part-time with us. He'll actively engage daily devotions. He'll still be working through his GED where we directly monitor and help and support. But then he will go work for a landscape company in town and at $4 more an hour and maybe start earning 40 plus hours a week, which we don't give him, and for a season. And maybe in that process, he's identified as a go-getter and the season becomes, hey, Matt, I'm going to go over there and work full time. But this is a partner that would come in and say, you have somebody who's interested, I'm going to do a chainsaw workshop because it is a hard skill that somebody says, I can't hire you if you can't safely operate this thing. We would do that anyway. But now that particular employer says, do you have anybody that you think would be a good fit for me? I can't offer full-time right now, but, and there's always that question mark. And so we have that same relationship with a local builder who has come back and said, when I hire, I'm looking for job skill A, B, C, D, and E. These three are the most important. When you have an employee who has gone through layers of what you're doing, which we do a 60, 90, and 120 day eval, and we grade the stuff, but it's not grade based on, I feel like you're a hard worker. It's you're a hard worker, and here's how I know it, right? Like when you come in, we monitor and measure how much active shop time you have, right? Like, do you need to be told what to do or you just go to work, right? Like all these things are measured. And then that prospective employer will say, well, geez, you have somebody? I have a spot. I'll take them. So there are transitional partners. And so the desire is to constantly grow that. Then on top of everybody that calls us and says, come get it as a partner in the appliance ministry.
So again, another principle, and you didn't even talk about you're working with parole officers, reemployability, DHHS, Department of Health and Human Services, Michigan Works. I mean, all of these partnerships are so precious. Landlords, I mean, I know you work with landlords, plus the community at large. It's really an amazing thing. See, this is what churches sometimes miss, that when you're running an entrepreneur ministry like this, the impact in the community is so far-reaching, hard, but so rewarding. Matt, you were talking about all the business relationships, and we're getting close to being out of time here. But would you maybe just talk about the future? Because I love your goal, and you have this amazing goal.
So the future is, in all fairness, when I say goal, I say dream, right? Like, okay, what's the dream? The dream is 100 employees. And the reality is that our current physical plant would never house 100 employees. And the community's capacity to supply donated items will probably never justify the expense of 100 employees. And there are other needs in the community. I was afforded the opportunity to go to school and get my contractor's license. And so the dream is to say, all right, is there a community need? Yes, there is. People need their houses fixed. Specifically, people have holes in their roofs and they're waiting on callbacks. Partnership through our church and the local school is bringing in kids from all across the country for a 1-week work camp where they will be up on maybe 4 roofs total.
Right.
And there is a request of that same work camp for as many as 70, 80, 90 people that absolutely yes qualify, absolutely no can't figure out how to pay for it, and nobody's helping. And they need their roofs fixed. So principal, respond to community need, and then can we hire and employ more people? And so the dream is to expand into contracting, not to try to take away from the local builder, right? Because that's never our thing. Honestly, it is to fill the local builders' crews who pay better than we do, right? Or spawn new local builders, which is the bigger dream, right? Which is the toolbox plus, right? It is I have a belt, I have a safety strap, and during my time at Pivot Point, I earned the trailer, the nail gun, the ladders, all the things I need to go and provide for my family in a way that is far exceeds what we can do by selling an appliance.
So the other principle that we talk about is you're providing an opportunity for them to do it for themselves.
Yeah.
And
that's
you're
the
giving
dream.
jobs, you're giving opportunities, and you're solving a need, because I'm not overly concerned about the other general contractors who aren't getting those roofing jobs, because the people that you're talking about oftentimes can't afford them. They can't bring them.
Oh, and that's
so
the
they
thing.
have, they go to a store and they buy a tarp and they put it over their roof, and that's their roof because they have the holes in it. So we're actually able to go in for a reduced rate and solve problems to keep people in their homes. A lot of times Alice or seniors or those that are in poverty, that contractors may not necessarily want to go to because they know that they might not get paid. So I think all the way around, I love your dream, because helping 100 people to make a living for themselves, providing them the opportunity to buy tools, and all the things they need, providing them an opportunity to become, managers and crew leaders, and learn roofing, get their general contractor license, leave us and go start their own businesses. That's the amazing things that churches can do. That's what's so incredible. And I think I just want to encourage everybody listening, every church can do something like this. It doesn't take a lot, and this ministry costs the church virtually nothing at the end of the year. It's the most break-even ministry that we have. That I think, if the numbers I saw, you guys were running $64 a head or something.
Yeah, it was.
It's right
always
on the edge,
Yep.
But think about the impact, the ministry impact, the life impact, the future impact. That's what churches get to do.
Oh, and I think we always have that conversation, is that this work that we do is just a way to connect with people, right? Show the love of Christ by coming to your home for a thing, right? And to me, one of those amazing stories is the girl who comes in and says, "Hey, you're not nice to me, and I have to have a fridge," and we figure out how to make it be a thing. And then the fridge dies well before the warranty runs up. And we're back. And then we're back again. And then we're back again. And sometimes you're like, God, what the heck is going on here? Right? Why are we constantly coming back? And I think initially it's frustration. And then you're like, because God needs you there. Right? And it's not me. It's God needs Jason there to share his story.
Yes.
God needs Corwin there to share his story.
Yeah.
And then we're connecting dots that are people, even though the appliance was the thing, the people are being healed. They're being loved, right? And that's daily prayer. Have the phone ring with people who need us more than we need them, right? And literally that's the daily part of our prayer.
So, Matt, I don't know if churches are going to jump into an appliance ministry necessarily, but roofing may not be outside the scope of a church. So if you would talk to a church that they're listening right now, and the church is going, hey, I wonder if we got any people that could help with the roofing, what would you recommend that they go do, and how? Would you just say, go do it all for free? So if you had this structure, a ministry for a church right now, it's coming up on summer, what would you tell that church to do?
First thing is identify one person who knows what they're doing.
Okay.
Right? So when you're talking about roofs, you can't just go jump up on a roof. One person has to know. Mm-hmm. But the reality is it doesn't have to be the guy that can physically do it. We saw it when we had to replace the church roof, right? Roger Miller did not step up on the roof, but he knew what he was doing, and he led a crew of kids that were physically able to do the work to get it done safely, right? So one person.
Okay, can I clarify? They weren't kids. They were
child labor.
They had to be at least 18 years old. So I just want I don't want people thinking we had 10-year-olds on the roof and 6-year-olds on the roof running around. Yeah. They had to be 18 and above. They were young adults.
Yeah. So fair enough. They were young adults.
Okay.
Another
so
principle.
Now go ahead with the story.
So
I'm thinking
Lindsay was talking about my hair earlier, and I'm very aware of the white, right? So they're kids. But somebody who knows what's going on, right? And then it is, what does this cost, right? And figure out what the cost is. And go to the box store like Lowe's, go to Menards, go to whatever, and just say, this is what we're doing. Is there any way you can help, right? Self-serve lumber, right? They will sell you the pallet of mix-matched shingles. How do I know? Look at my garage. It looks like a rainbow right now, right? Because they will sell inexpensive after product, right? Mm-hmm. And then figure out how long is this going to take, and then go seek somebody who has the physical capacity to do that physical work, and then get up there and do it. I mean, I don't know that there's a magic answer to that. Mm-hmm. Well, how would you start this? Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, obviously being licensed helps, right? Because there's a piece of the puzzle, but the reality is that we have people in our congregation who have what we as a church don't, right? Like we have licensed electrician. Will you help us with this? Ask them, right? Mm-hmm. Like worst thing they can say is no, but what if they say yes? Mm-hmm. And next thing you know, they say yes, and then they're your partner forever. And it's a plus, right? Mm-hmm. And if you're like, this is my dream and I don't know how to do it, I'd say start with prayer, right? And then start actively seeking those people who have that skill set to do what you're thinking can't be done by yourself.
I would add to that, it may be a good thing to say to somebody, you buy the materials, we put it on. And for those who are like, what about the liability? You'll have to call your insurance company for the church, but this is what we did. We called the insurance company, and they said, if the church is going out as a ministry to help somebody in the community, they're actually covered in terms of liability. And most people don't realize, like, oh, you mean so if we're going as a church that this is a ministry of the church, and most ministries that the church do, insurance companies are like, we would cover that. So it'd be something to look into. But yeah, that'd be a great ministry for people to jump in the community, take the resources in your church, and go make a difference in the community.
For sure.
Great. I think that's a great place to end and gives people some next steps of what they could do. So thank you again, Matt, for being here today. We hope to have you on again in the future. And that was a great conversation. Thanks. So we will see everybody next week. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Beyond the Breakwater, a podcast of Elevate Community Ministries. Don't let the conversation stop here. You can email us at hello@beyondthebreakwater.org. We would love to chat with you, answer questions, plan a visit, and help you take your next step. We'll see you next week.